Welcome everyone to this episode of SLC TV's Ask Me Anything. This is brought to you by the Salt Lake City Sustainability Department, also known as SLC Green. My name is Debbie Lyons. I'm the new Director of Sustainability. I say new because I'm new to the role, but I'm not new to the city. I've been with the city for 25 years working on various environmental and sustainability initiatives. I'm joined by Mayor Mendenhall. She's long been a champion of clean air and clean energy as a community advocate, as a council member, and as a mayor. I'm also joined by Vicki Bennett, our outgoing Director of Sustainability. She's going to offer us some of her words of wisdom and reflections as she heads off into retirement. Christopher Thomas, our Senior Climate and Energy Program Manager, will be giving a short presentation on the Community Renewable Electricity Program. We have ambitious goals to reduce carbon emissions and achieve 100% clean electricity for our entire community by 2030. We're offering this presentation so we can provide as much opportunity for the community to learn and weigh in as we seek to achieve our goals. During the presentation, feel free to pop your questions into the comments and we'll get to those at the end of Christopher's presentation. After the questions, we'll give Christopher and Mayor Mendenhall a chance to offer some closing thoughts. And then if you want to check in with us after that or offer comments or feedback or just get the latest updates, you can visit our website at slcgreen.com and find links to follow us on our social media channels. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Mayor Mendenhall.
Thanks, Debbie and the sustainability team for putting this together today. Thank you to all of you for joining us today on Facebook at our Ask Me Anything for Salt Lake City's progress toward our 100% renewable electricity goals. We want to give you an update on the city's progress on meeting these renewable energy goals and give you that opportunity to ask us any questions through the chat. Basically, by the end of this hour, I hope that you will feel like you are pretty well versed in the landscape that we are navigating to try to get clean energy here as fast as possible. And before we begin the presentation, I want to let you know why it's so important to me. The science is crystal clear that we need to cut our carbon emissions in half by 2030 to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. Among all of the energy sectors, electricity is the easiest to transition to renewable sources like solar and wind. And that's because solar and wind are cost effective. And in many cases, they're even cheaper than the polluting sources like gas and coal. That's why Salt Lake City set ambitious renewable electricity goals, first for our government operations, and second for our entire community to reach net 100 renewable by 2030. My personal goal is that we achieve that transition even faster, as fast as we possibly can, while also ensuring that the program remains affordable, that it protects the most vulnerable members of our community, and that we bring along as many other communities as we possibly can so that we can multiply our impact beyond Salt Lake City. So please remember to type your questions into the Facebook chat and we'll pause to take those questions at the end of the presentation. Now I'll hand it over to Vicki.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all for joining us today. It's so exciting to talk about our renewable energy goals, and they go back for the 20 years that I've worked for the city. In 2002, we became a Solar America city. Some of you may see some of the old signs still hanging up on the light poles throughout the city. Partnering with Utah Clean Energy, we set a goal of having 10 megawatts of solar in the state in 10 years. That seemed like such an impossible target at the time. And a lot of that work was really to just plan and come up with ideas based on what we knew about solar back then. We then did few small projects on some city buildings, and we're excited when we had our 1 megawatt solar farm that we used to offset energy use at our new public safety building. Over time, we added more and more solar projects, especially on our fire stations. But we knew to make transformational change, we'd have to do something a lot larger. We set 2 goals for our electricity supply. The first was to have 50% renewable energy for our municipal operations by 2020. We found that working with other cities and counties in the region, they also had aggressive goals, so we partnered with them and were able to plan and build even a larger project. While we've fallen behind schedule on that due to the pandemic, we're now working on an 80 megawatt solar farm, half of which will go to Salt Lake City. This is going to come online in 2023. And even though we have to wait a little, it's going to provide us somewhere in the range of 85 to 90% of our electricity needs. So really worth the wait. And as we're really talking about today, our overall goal is to provide 100% of the electricity for our entire community from renewable resources by 2030, a really large undertaking. With aspirations as large as this, we've learned that to affect change, it's really important to understand the needs of our partners. Working with other interested communities, we researched a number of different models to provide renewable energy to our residents. Most would have required changes to state law, and in talking to our partner, Rocky Mountain Power, we learned that they wouldn't support some of those existing options because, quite frankly, it would take business away from them. So rather than try to, fight and do this in an adversarial manner, we sat down with Rocky Mountain Power, learned about their business model, learned about their needs, and how we could work together to create a program that would give us the renewable energy that we wanted and keep them whole at the same time. The result was HB 411, the law that we had passed at the legislature through this partnership with Rocky Mountain Power in 2019, that's allowing us to create our Community Renewable Energy Program. The details are coming, and I'm going to turn those over now to Christopher Thomas, who can fill you in on where we are and plans for the future. Christopher?
Great. Thank you very much, Vicki. And it's just so great to hear about the history. We have a lot supporting our effort, and we have big ambitions. So anyway, I'm hopeful that you can all see my slide presentation, and let's dig in. So today we want to talk about Salt Lake City's renewable electricity progress. So we first want to give an update where we are, what we see happening next. And then we also want to hear from all of you who are attending on Facebook today. So please type your questions into the chat. If you have comments, please share those. And, I also hope that you're thinking in the back of your head, how might I want to be involved in this going forward? And if you do want to be involved, please let us know. So we're going to start with an update on our renewable electricity progress on two different fronts. On one front, achieving our renewable electricity goals for our local government operations, and then secondarily to talk about our progress on setting up a renewable energy program for the whole community of Salt Lake City, all the residents and all the businesses. And we want to start off by talking about the vision, and then talk about what is the plan to get us from where we are today to achieving the vision. So let's start with renewable electricity for city operations. And you may not think a lot about how much energy or electricity it takes to power all of city operations, but it's quite a lot. We're talking about electricity that keeps the lights on at our airport. We're talking about electricity that helps keep our water clean, as well as what you might normally think about, which is, the lights and the heating and cooling for our city buildings. So it's quite a lot of electricity use. And so anyway, our goals that we set for renewable electricity for our city operations were 50% renewable electricity by 2020. Vicki talked about that goal. And then 100% renewable electricity by 2030. So the good news is, even though we are delayed, we didn't hit the 2020 target year, but even still, the good news is we are on our way. We are on our way to having most of our electricity from renewable sources by 2023 and to be net 100% renewable electricity by 2030. And that's because we recently completed our single largest renewable energy acquisition at the end of last year. And that project is called the Elektron solar project. So I want to tell you just a little bit about that. So as Vicki mentioned, a lot of these plans have been in the works for quite a long time. And so we, Salt Lake City, worked with 5 other large electricity users around the state back in 2019, and we issued a request for proposals working in collaboration with Rocky Mountain Power. And so, as I mentioned before, this solar farm should be up and running by 2023. So we're looking at about a 4-year timeline from when we issued the first request to when this new solar farm will be delivering electricity. And as Vicki said, that is a long time to wait, but on the other hand, the results will be fantastic. And this will be a huge piece in the city being able to meet our goals. So the Elektron Solar Project will be among the largest solar farms in Utah at 80 megawatts. And had this solar farm been online in 2019, it would have supplied almost 90% of Salt Lake City's metered electricity for government operations, with a smaller than 2% overall impact to our bills. So huge renewable energy impact for a very small additional investment. We're quite pleased with how that worked out. This project will also have a bunch of benefits to our region. So it'll support around 100 construction jobs. It will also support ongoing revenue for Tooele County and for the state school and institutional trust lands administration. So I want to put the Elektron Solar Project in a bit of a comparison in context with the city's other renewable electricity efforts. Because as Vicki mentioned, we've been acquiring renewable electricity for many years. So if you look at our distributed solar, this is solar that we've built on the roofs of our city buildings. It's solar that we built on city property. We've done 17 projects going back to 2011, and those supply about 2.8 gigawatt hours of electricity every year. So they're fantastic. We love distributed solar. It has a lot of unique benefits, chief of which is that it actually supports jobs in our city boundaries. So we've long enjoyed distributed solar. Then we also in 2016 joined in Rocky Mountain Power's subscriber solar effort. This is a 20 megawatt solar farm in Millard County. It's online, it's operating so for many years. And Salt Lake City subscribed to a share of the output of that solar plant. And so that gives us the equivalent of about 7.2 gigawatt hours per year. But when we now jump to the Elektron Solar Farm, it will supply us about 100 gigawatt hours. So many times more, all previous renewable energy investments, 100 gigawatt hours per year. And to put this in perspective for how much each of these amounts of energy is as a percentage of the city's total electric consumption, and these are based on 2019 numbers. So the distributed solar gives us about 3% of our total electricity consumption in a year. Subscriber solar represents about 6%. And the Elektron project alone, again, if we look at 2019 numbers, would have represented about 88% of the city's total electricity needs. So it's quite large, and we're very pleased. Okay, so we've talked about meeting Salt Lake City's renewable electricity goal for government operations. Now we're going to switch, and we're going to talk about another goal that we have. This goal encompasses the entire Salt Lake City community, businesses, residents, basically everybody who lives here. And so the goal here is to have net 100% renewable electricity by 2030. So let me talk a little bit about the vision for this Community Renewable Energy Program. So the idea is we want a default net 100% renewable electricity option for everyone who lives and works here. Because of that, we need it to be affordable. So affordability is going to be a really important part of seeing this program succeed. And with this program, we want to inject a significant amount of new renewable energy into our electric grid, not somebody else's electric grid, but coming into our electric grid and offsetting our carbon footprint. And while it does this, it also must protect low-income customers. And finally, it's not just Salt Lake City who is eligible for this program. It's 22 other communities across the state. And so we hope to leverage our interest, our participation and leadership to bring other communities along with us so we multiply that renewable energy impact. And so you might be saying to yourself, well, okay, so you have this idea for this renewable energy program. Why couldn't you have just used one of the existing renewable energy programs that's already out there? And there are a lot of programs out there and they're good, but they didn't quite fit the vision that we have. So the Blue Sky program has been available for many years. It does some really good things. However, it mostly supports existing renewable projects. So projects that are already up and running, may have been for years. And these projects aren't necessarily connected to our electric grids, necessarily greening our own electric supply. The subscriber solar program is also really cool, but so far it's only supported one new 20 megawatt solar farm, and it's currently capped. Now it won't be capped forever, but it currently is, and it requires customer opt-in. So we think that the total size of any program like this will, by design, be somewhat small if it requires an opt-in to participate. Rooftop solar, which I mentioned before, has many benefits, including supporting local jobs, but it typically requires a pretty big upfront financial investment from, say, a homeowner or a business owner, or it requires getting a loan. We know that not all of our businesses and not all of our residents are in a position to be able to do that. So that's why we wanted a different program that would match the scale of our ambitions. It's important to note here that this program will be the first of its kind in the country. It's kind of like Utah's version of a community choice aggregation. However, those kinds of community choice aggregation programs usually go around their utility. And they can be for that reason, they can be very expensive to try to get going. They might fail, they might never get up and running. And so we are excited about this, but it will be a challenge because we're marrying community interests for renewable electricity with an investor-owned monopoly utility. And so, as Vicki was saying, it's really important for each of us to understand the rules and the limitations that each of us operate under so that we can find a collaborative solution that reaches our goals. So now I want to talk about the steps. So we've talked about the vision for the Community Renewable Program. Now I want to talk about what we see as the next steps for moving forward to make this program actually a reality. So step one has been going on since last year, and that is assembling the eligible communities who really want to participate and move forward. So there's 23 that are eligible. However, there are several required steps to come, and we've got to figure out who is just sort of dipping their toe in versus who is like ready to move forward, who's ready to make a financial investment to make this program a reality. So we're hoping that this next month, we will have a governance agreement go into effect. And that governance agreement talks about, okay, who's in, how are we going to cover the costs that it will take to make this program happen? And importantly, how will all of these diverse communities all over the state who want to participate, how will they make decisions together? Because our communities look different. Some are big, some are small, some are more rural, some are more urban. So hopefully that governance agreement will be done next month. Then our attention will really turn to designing what the program will look like. And so this will entail a lot of expert consultation. It will require negotiations with our utility, Rocky Mountain Power. And through this, we will design how this program rate will actually look on people's bills. We will actually need to project, okay, over time, what do we think the customer bill impact will be for participating in this program? And we'll also need to develop a low-income plan among a host of other items that we have to address because they're required by state law. That whole effort will result in a utility agreement. That's an agreement that each community that wants to move forward, including Salt Lake City, will need to sign with Rocky Mountain Power. Once we've come to agreement on what this program will look like, we will submit it to the Utah Public Service Commission. So they are the state board, basically, who decides is something in the public's interest or is it not? And they very closely regulate or they have the duty to regulate these kinds of decisions. So hopefully we'll submit that application by September of next year, September 2022. And hope, if all goes well, hopefully the Public Service Commission will approve our application. And then there's a last remaining step, we hope by December of 2022, where every community that has raised its hand and joined on at each step of the process will pass an ordinance that will finalize their participation in the program. And as I mentioned through the implementation plan, there was a law that was passed in 2019. It's called the Utah Community Renewable Energy Act, and it created a pathway for us to create this program. It didn't create the program itself, but it said, okay, if you're going to make this program, here are all the steps that we're going to require along the way. And as I mentioned before, 23 Utah communities became eligible to participate as of December 2019. They only had until December 2019 to raise their hand and say they were interested. And so really we've been working since that month, since the next month, January of 2020, to figure out how we're going to do all these steps and how we're going to create a program that lots of communities want to participate in. I do want to pay special attention to the low income plan. So state law requires that we, Salt Lake City, submit a plan for low income assistance for our low income residents. But it doesn't say exactly what needs to be in that plan. But the way that we are interpreting this requirement is that if the Community Renewable Energy Program rate is higher or more costly than the standard offer service, and we don't know that yet, we still have to determine that, but if it is higher, we want to be able to protect our most vulnerable residents. And so to do this, our current idea is to convene a policy lab that will help us better understand the financial pressures faced by our low-income residents. And we want their direct input to help us design our low-income plan. And overall, I think we want our low-income plan to really do two things. Number one, we want it to reduce potential harms to our low-income customers, and at best, hopefully improve energy equity across our city. So I want to turn now to scale, because so far I've talked about, well, there's 23 communities eligible, but you might not know, well, how much of the state's electricity consumption is eligible to participate in the Community Renewable Program. And so if you look at the total eligible, if you look at total Rocky Mountain Power electric sales across Utah, communities who are eligible for Community Renewable Energy Program represent 37% of that total load. So this is a huge piece, not the majority, but a huge piece of Rocky Mountain Power's statewide sales if everybody who's eligible participates. And if you try to translate what this total eligible amount of energy looks like by 2030, and you have to make a lot of assumptions, right, about what is the renewable energy mix of the entire system in 2030? Does electric consumption grow or does it shrink between now and 2030? But basically, this is a big enough program, it could potentially double the amount of utility scale solar connected to Rocky Mountain Power's grid in Utah. So this program, if everybody participates, could have a really huge impact on Utah's renewable energy future. And now I want to talk about what is Salt Lake City's share of the eligible electricity for this program. So Salt Lake City does have both the privilege and the responsibility of being the single largest local government or community who is eligible for this program. We represent about 35% of the total eligible electricity, and everybody else represents the other 65%. So I think what this says to me is we're a big player here, and if we can create a program that appeals to that other 65%, we can really dramatically multiply our impact. And so that's why, you know, we've really tried to help lead a collaborative process among all the eligible communities to try to figure out what is a program that will work for everyone. The most important question probably all of you have, and I don't know, I can't see the Facebook comments, but this may be the question that's already being asked. What will this program cost for customers to participate in? And the honest answer, somewhat unsatisfying, but it's that we don't know yet. There are a lot of moving parts to trying to predict what a program like this would cost. But we do know this is probably the most important question that we have to answer. And we do have reason to be optimistic. So as the mayor mentioned, renewable energy pricing is very cheap and it's stable over time. That's a really nice attribute, that if you build a solar farm today, you pretty much know what it's going to cost you year after year after year, because we know pretty much how often the sun is shining. We know how equipment works over time. So renewable energy is very cost effective, and that is a good indicator that our program that we create will be affordable. However, it's not the only variable that we have to consider. In addition to knowing how much a new resource will cost to build, we also have to know how costly will it be to integrate into the larger Rocky Mountain Power system. Then on the other side, our program resources that we bring online might actually create benefits for everybody else, even if they're not part of the Community Renewable Energy Program. Those could be things like reduced overall price volatility. We could be at some point facing a carbon tax, and by our program putting lots of new renewable electricity on the system, we're reducing our overall exposure to potential carbon taxes. So that will be a big point of discussion. And then lastly, how much of the standard offer system will our program participants need to pay for? Because we won't solely be relying on the new program resources we build. We will be sometimes relying on the system that's serving everybody else. And so what is it fair and reasonable that, that our program pays for of that existing system? So this will really be the next step that we have coming up, which is to really focus on the analytical piece. How are we going to design this program? We got to discuss all the different possible costs, all the possible benefits, and then we've got to estimate customer bills. To help us with this, our new Community Renewable Energy Agency that we have set up through our governance agreement has a budget. We will hire experts who are well-versed in these kinds of questions, and they will help us evaluate and hopefully help inform our proposal to create the very best, most affordable, most effective program that we possibly can. But importantly, this new agency has got to agree on the program design with Rocky Mountain Power. We've got to agree with each other first, and then jointly submit an application to the Utah Public Service Commission for them to review and hopefully approve. As I mentioned, part of this application process will be to estimate customer bill impacts. And we hope, we don't know for sure, but we hope that we'll have some initial estimates for what these customer bill impacts might be sometime this winter. Although it could be later. You know, there could be snags that we run into. There could be challenges with how we analyze these things. So it could be later than that, but we hope by this winter. And then as, let's say our program gets approved by the Utah Public Service Commission, then as we're moving forward, the actual bill impacts will depend on the actual resources we build, what they cost when we build them, and when they are procured. And when the program actually begins, here's what we think it could look like. So hopefully, if our whole program gets approved by the Utah Public Service Commission, we would look to issue a request for proposals. So we basically work with Rocky Mountain Power, we put a bid out into the world and we say, hey, we want to build some renewable energy. Give us your pricing. What will it cost to build a wind farm? What will it cost to build a solar farm? And then the board of our Community Renewable Energy Agency will vote to decide on which projects we want to move forward with. So we'll select a project or several projects potentially. And then 60 days before the first new Community Renewable Energy Program bill arrives, there will be an opportunity to opt out. So at least 60 days before, every customer in Salt Lake City will get a first notice followed by a second notice that will say, look, we're creating this new program. Here's the bill impacts that you could be looking at. Do you want to opt out? And we hope nobody opts out. We want everybody to participate, and we hope they'll all want to participate. And then after the first program bill arrives, there are actually 3 billing cycles, so 3 months where everybody will get a bill. And then during those times, customers still can opt out, and there won't be any exit fee or anything like that. So if they get a bill and they say, you know what, I don't know about this program, I don't want to be a part of it, they can opt out. Again, we hope they don't. Because we think it'll be a great program and people will want to participate. However, after those 3 billing cycles, there may, and I stress may, be an exit fee. And this is basically in place so that we don't build more resources than there are actually people who want to be getting their electricity from them. But it could be that this exit fee only applies to some customers and not others. Maybe it doesn't apply to small customers, but it does apply to big customers. Maybe there are waivers for certain circumstances. So that'll be an important point of negotiation. And it is something that is required that we negotiate as part of the state law. And then we want to achieve net 100% renewable electricity by 2030 or sooner if we can. As the mayor said, we want to achieve this goal as soon as we possibly can while making sure this is a program that people actually want to be a part of, that it's affordable, that will have broad support among all of the eligible communities. So we are about to go to the time where we pause to take questions from Facebook. But before we do, I do want to have just one exercise. So we've set up a live poll. We'll give you a link to answer this poll if you want to, but here is the setup. There are many attributes of this program that we hope to achieve. We hope it has a very low cost. We hope we can achieve it as soon as we possibly can. We hope it's as large as it possibly can be. And we would love to achieve all these 3 things equally well. But that may not be the case. It could be that there are trade-offs where if we try to, make the program as affordable as possible, we might have to see a trade-off in how quickly we achieve it or potentially the size. So, for example, if you're somebody who says speed is the very most important thing to you, you're basically saying, look, it's okay to me if the program is more expensive and if it's smaller, as long as the goal is achieved as quickly as possible. So that's if you are in the speed camp. Or you might gravitate more toward size of the program being the most important thing. And if you're in this camp, you're saying, it's okay if the program goal is achieved less quickly, and it's okay if it's more expensive, as long as this program is as large as it possibly can be. Or you might be in the third camp, where cost is the most important thing to you. And you'd say, okay, I'm good with a program that is achieved less quickly and that is smaller in overall size, as long as it's as affordable as it possibly can be. So again, we don't know that these will be the trade-offs, but if these trade-offs exist, we are curious to hear from you. What is your priority? So I now have a live poll question on the screen. We would love for you to take this poll question. Please rank order 3 attributes of the Community Renewable Energy Program from the top one, that's the one you think is the very most important, to the bottom, and that's the one you think is the least important. Again, we hope all 3 can be achieved equally, but if there is a trade-off, we want to know your prioritization. So there's 2 ways to answer this poll question. One is if you use your smartphone. If you've got a smartphone, use the camera, have it face the QR code, and it will suggest that you open a link. And that link will take you to this poll question. And when you get there, use your fingers to drag the different attributes into your preferred order, with the one that's most important at the top and the least important at the bottom. The other way to answer this question is that I believe one of my colleagues will put into the Facebook chat a link that you can click on your computer to take you to this poll question. So please do answer that poll question, and we will look at the results later. And now I would like to break for questions. So we'll take some questions from the chat from Debbie. So I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Christopher, for that presentation. We do have a few questions that I will direct to our panelists. Let's see. Let me go to question 1. Mayor Mendenhall, this will be for you. Why is the program important to you, and what can the city do to help ensure that this collaborative effort succeeds?
I believe that climate change is the biggest worldwide issue that we need to be grappling with at a local level, all the way up to international conflict relations as they relate to climate change. And this is an urgent issue that will affect almost every aspect of life. The opportunity that Christopher's talked about with the Community Renewable Energy Program reminds me of years ago when I was a new city council member and I was coming out of the council, and a couple of council members who had been on the council at the time said, let's ban wood burning in Salt Lake City during certain months. We can just ban it. And from my work in the activist and advocate community, I thought we could do that, but I'm pretty sure the legislature in 2 weeks will take that ability away from us and every other city if we do it by ourselves like that. And so I worked with the health department at Salt Lake County at the time, and we were able to have the health department pass using their regulations to prohibit wood burning during and leading up to red air quality times when we used to call them red air days. It's similar in nature, but it's so much bigger. What Christopher just talked about is tripling the renewable energy that will be provided by Rocky Mountain Power, tripling more than if we had done it alone. And if we'd done it alone, what opportunity would there be, if any, for other cities to try to go this path? So bringing along 22 other cities and counties, tripling the renewable energy footprint, and having a path that ensures that every single one of those communities does so in a way that is affordable for all of their residents, that's tremendous. It's tremendous because we believe that the people, I know the people in Salt Lake City want to see cleaner air, and that they want to see us make these transitions as fast as possible. We are, even though our resolution states that we want to get there by 2030, I see pathways through this Community Renewable Energy Program that will get us there even faster. So it's great because it's huge. It does so much more than we would do alone. We will do it in a way that is affordable for our residents, and we're bringing along so many other cities and counties. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Mendenhall. This next question will be for Vicki Bennett. This sounds very cool. And you talked a lot about the history of how we got here. How in the world did you get this program to work here in Utah?
Well, I think we learned a lot from a lot of our peer cities in the region. We have collaborated with cities across the nation for years, and learned from each other as to what works and what doesn't. And one of the cities we kept looking at as an example is Boulder, Colorado, because they have very aggressive goals. They really want to move forward on renewable energy. And they actually just said, well, we're going to buy out all of our lines and the transmission lines, and we're going to do what's called municipalize. So essentially take it all over and have the city run their energy supply. Well, that requires them to buy out everything from the monopoly they work with, and they have had, I think, 3 elections and different initiatives on this. They have had 10 years of discussions. They have had multi-million dollars in various, lawyers arguing over the value, and they still haven't succeeded. And we thought, well, if they're going through this, we're, and I'm not saying this to disparage my friends in Boulder, because we've learned a lot and worked closely with them on a lot of things. But, we learned that you can't just try and force your way through. You've got to partner. And when we started sitting down with Rocky Mountain Power, understanding their needs, figuring out the requirements so we could then take a bill to the legislature as a team, then the legislature looked and said, well, if they're both on the same side, then it's got to be something that we can support, because we've thought through at least many of the details. And, you've heard so many of the things we still have to work through that Christopher's talking about, but we'll use the same collaborative process to get there.
Great, thank you, Vicki. So the next question is for Christopher. When do you expect the new program resources to come online?
I think it's I'm hoping for 2024 or 2025. We hope to get this program all the way ready to go by 2023. But it takes a while to build these giant facilities. These giant wind farm or a solar farm or a battery. So they're quite large. They take a while to bring online. I'm hopeful for 2024 or 2025.
Okay, this is kind of a follow-up question for the mayor, linking to that from Travis on Facebook. What is your progress on meeting your goal of 100% clean energy for residents by 2023 using the franchise agreement negotiations from this year?
Yeah, great question. And as you've been hearing, we're pushing all the levers that we do have control of to get this done as fast as possible. We're going to have accomplished a lot of the work by 2023. By 2023, we'll have that government's agreement signed. When you think back to Christopher's timeline of what those steps are next, the program will be designed by then, and if all goes well, our application will be made to the Public Service Commission for then. By then. Those are steps we have control over. We aim to have our Salt Lake City ordinance passed by December of 2022. And in the budget that the council is considering right now that I've recommended is Salt Lake City's allocation to be one of the anchor communities to fund the startup of this joint operation agreement between the 23 cities and counties who have said we want 100% renewable as fast as possible. So we're funding it right now. We'll get our ordinance passed and we'll go to the Public Service Commission by 2023, and then the renewable procurement begins. We have to get it right. We can't make it too expensive or it will never succeed. And we need to ensure that we're not impacting our low-income customers unnecessarily. So balancing cost and timeline is the current work that we're doing. And I feel confident that the process that has been laid out is that's making it possible for us to hit the right target. We're working with Rocky Mountain Power this year on our franchise agreement and the new cooperative statement. So it's been about 5 years, and maybe Vicki or Christopher wants to comment on the cooperation statement, but we're making progress with the CREP as this large and affordable and as swift as possible operation where this will be a key feature of that. So we'll keep you updated as those conversations take place with Rocky Mountain Power going forward. And I just appreciate you pushing us and encourage you to keep involved and support these other communities who are doing the work as well.
Great. I'm going to go over to Christopher for a minute, and maybe you can talk about the franchise agreement and the cooperative agreement that we'll be talking to Rocky Mountain Power about this year. And
Sure.
what role does that play in this program?
Well, I guess I'll kind of point backwards to 2016. So there was a negotiation around our franchise agreement with Rocky Mountain Power. That agreement basically, the main thing it does is it gives access to Rocky Mountain Power to rights of way that they really need in order to create the electric infrastructure needed to deliver electricity to everyone in our community. And they're required by state law to be able to offer that electric service to everyone in the community who wants it. So it's an important agreement for them and for us. We also, back in 2016, negotiated what is called a Clean Energy Cooperation Statement. And I wasn't with the city then. Vicki, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything. But my impression of that initial agreement was we said to Rocky Mountain Power, look, we've got ambitious clean energy goals. This is really important to the people who live and work here. And we want to be able to have a good faith agreement that we will collaborate together within our constraints. And the agreement clearly articulates what those some of those constraints that each of us face are, but we want to agree that we'll work on these things together in good faith. And so in that agreement, that really paved the way for what became the Elektron solar farm. And Rocky Mountain Power really had to step in at some critical moments of getting that Elektron project approved and through the Public Service Commission, and it wouldn't have been approved had they not stepped in at some key points. So, another part of that initial agreement paved the way for what became the Community Renewable Energy Act. So I think for Salt Lake City, that Clean Energy Cooperation Statement really helped align the focus and created a space for the critical conversations that needed to happen in order for those projects and those initiatives to move forward.
Thanks for that clarification, Christopher. I'm going to take another question from Mackenzie on Facebook. This is for you, Vicki. It's a little bit of a different question. With all the new buildings funded by city, will all the new buildings funded by city money be all electric and emission-free by 2023? And how does the city plan to accomplish this?
Well, that's one that we're really pretty close on and have been moving forward with for a few years now. We have a city policy that all new buildings will be evaluated to be net zero and all electric, and unless it is impossible for some reason. We do have a caveat there. If it's totally over, costs too much for some reason, or for example, our 2 new fire stations are net zero. And the only reason they aren't all electric is we still do have to have some backup generation. Now in the future, we'll be able to put batteries in, I think, and avoid having to have any sort of carbon emission from them. But, so there are a few exceptions, but very few. And we are now already looking at turning this policy into ordinance. I will be taking that to the council this year. That will essentially require all of the buildings to be all electric and net zero emissions.
Great.
Debbie, can I interject?
Yeah, sure.
So Vicki's talking about city-owned buildings, and the question might have been with regard to something I announced at State of the City this year, which was that any buildings that receive funding, new construction projects that receive funding from the city, will be all electric by 2023. And that's really not sustainability, because they don't fund the construction of buildings that don't belong to the city, but the redevelopment agency often does. And they've been working on a new environmental policy around loans that will be coming to the RDA board in the next couple of months. They've already put it together, and we've been working on it on our end of the hall. So you can watch for that to be made public shortly. And I'm just grateful that the business case, the technology has evolved to the point that this is something that's not just good and necessary for our clean energy goals, but is good from an affordability standpoint. And it makes sense on the business side of things too. So watch for that coming very soon from the RDA.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I want to give a couple of shout outs on that initiative. That's it's really great. We have had staff working with the RDA to help advise them on those policy changes. We have partnership with Utah Clean Energy, who has really been instrumental in looking at model building codes and working with RDA. And I think they were funded by a UCARE grant to work with the RDA. So we have a lot of interest and partnership in that initiative. I will go to the next question for Christopher from Kenny on Facebook. Are there plans to add more EV vehicles to the SLC government fleet, as well as incentives for EV constituents? How will you grow that support for EVs?
That is a great question. There was a joint resolution passed at the end of last year supporting electrified transportation for Salt Lake City. And the different parts of that resolution, there were some that involved government operations, and there were some provisions that are for the community at large. And so we have not yet convened our electrified transportation steering committee, but we will be doing that in the next quarter. And that when it comes to the Salt Lake City government fleet, that resolution that I mentioned has some specific targets, and I'm going to get them wrong because I'm just doing this from memory, but I believe like one of them, it says, well, the city will only buy, if the city buys sedans in 2023 and going forward, they will be electric sedans. By 2025, when the city goes to purchase utility vehicles and trucks, they will all be electric, and so forth. So, I will just say that personally, I've been so excited to see how the electric vehicle market is shaping up this year. It seemed like somebody flipped a switch and everybody started announcing, oh, we're going all electric. I mean, there are a number of car manufacturers who have said, we will only produce electric cars, by 2030. So they've really stepped up to give a signal that this is where the market is headed. And so we, with our electrified transportation resolution and plans, we really want to make sure we are ready for and at the leading edge of this transition to electric vehicles. So yes, we've got good plans for local government or for our government fleet. In terms of incentives for EV constituents, we do operate within the city a network of 20 public-facing electric vehicle charging stations that so far we have allowed everybody to use within certain parameters, but for free, free electricity. And so that is a network that we can always, we may decide to add to. We also know that Rocky Mountain Power is going to be releasing a new incentive program on their end. So we plan to engage with them in conversation so that we make sure whatever the city does is in concert and additive to what Rocky Mountain Power's new program will be.
I would like to add that yesterday at the very long city council work session on a bunch of sections of the budget, the fleet was part of that. And our new fleet director, Nancy, is incredibly passionate about and strategically committed to transitioning our fleet to electric, and talked even a little bit about the brand new all electric fire truck that is the very first one I think is being deployed in California right now. We got to meet it as it came through Salt Lake City on its way to California last year. So we're going to watch how that technology and first model plays out, but we're looking at electrifying our fleet across the gambit, not just the sedans that city employees are driving around. So if you're into it, go back and look at the city council work session and you can hear our fleet director talk about that.
Yeah, thanks for that. I saw that last night and that excited me. Another thing that I wanted to bring up also is that we are moving through our system a proposal that would reduce some barriers for our renters in our city to adopt electric vehicles. And so we're working on an ordinance that would require in new construction at multifamily some EV capacity. So that's working its way through the system and will end up at the city council hopefully later this summer. So I will go to the next question Christopher, I'm going to send this one to you. I'm an electrical contractor living in Glendale for 28 years. How can I be a part of this?
Wow. That's a good question. I mean, it sounds like you are, I'm kind of interpreting this from your question, but it sounds like you're excited for this opportunity. I do think that one of the really cool things about the Community Renewable Energy Program is that our board will get to decide which projects get built. And so we're not constrained to only looking at places in Utah to build these, but I think it's a value that a lot of our communities share that, hey, we now have an opportunity to channel our investment into the state so that we're actually creating jobs and economic investment here. And so, you know, I think if you're interested, I would say, you know, please, you know, send me an email. I don't know if you can put my email address or if you should put it in the Facebook chat, but anyway, you can find my email address on our website, and I would love to hear from you because I do think that there are exciting opportunities for people who work in that industry to be a part of the projects that we end up building as part of this program.
Yeah, and
I
Oh,
could
go
add
ahead.
something there too. Something that we're also working on is our building electrification initiative, and really looking at ways that we can electrify buildings and do so in a cost-effective manner. And one of the perceived barriers is that a lot of contractors and even the heat pumps and things that we could deploy as an alternative to traditional, gas heating, people just they're not available. People aren't aware of them, and we do have an employee specifically working on that in our Salt Lake City Green group. So again, you could reach out to us, and we would really enjoy any sort of feedback you might be able to give us, because the more we can understand what your needs are to be able to do this, the better we can help everyone.
Great. Well, we're reaching the hour, so I'm just going to let Christopher and the mayor give us some last words and maybe talk about how residents can get involved in this and how they can learn about it. Christopher, to you.
Sure. So I would say just first, thank you so much to those of you who have attended. We are really excited that you're interested. If you want to learn more, please visit slcgreen.com. Also, there's another website called Utah100communities.org, and there you can learn more about the Community Renewable Energy Program.
Great. Mayor?
Thanks everybody for supporting the conversation and really being interested in continuing to push us. I hope you can feel our collective passion as your city leaders around sustainability for not just like putting our nose to the grindstone and getting done what we know is possible today, but constantly evaluating what new pathways could there possibly be, new partnerships, funding opportunities so that we can get this faster. We are driven and we need to keep hearing the feedback from all of you because there may be pathways we haven't imagined yet. So stay in touch with us. You can do that through signing up for the SLC Green notifications on our website. My office puts out notifications, and we'll do another one of these in the coming months, I think, and try to give you another update on where things are at. But how cool is it when I look back 15 years, even 10 years, and we were wishing that there was more momentum from outside of Salt Lake City to get renewable energy. We've got 23 cities and counties, only one of which is Salt Lake City, who are putting their hands up and putting their money where their mouth is, to be some of them to be anchor communities with us to fund the beginning of this. And it's incredible what we're able to do, not just by ourselves, but with all these partners. So support those other 22 out there. And thanks for tuning in with us today.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.